ruthless scammers are getting more and more aggressive, taking advantage of our online habits to hack into our lives and rob us not only of our data but also our cash. Criminals are trying to win our trust, even impersonating family members. One of our producers received a text message starting, "Hi Mum," asking Mum to message them on another number. Luckily, he didn't fall for it. Consumer group Which has issued a warning about the four most convincing scams seen so far this year. Now, pig butchering is a romance scam where victims are lured into investing in bogus schemes and scammers win their trust on dating sites. Fake missing persons appeals are shared online, and then when the post has thousands of likes, the words are changed to be about a sham financial opportunity. PayPal is also exploited, for example, to demand overdue taxes by fraudsters posing as HMRC. And dodgy apps can infect your phone with malware, I don't know what that means, that harvests your device for data. Now, this is interesting. I'm joined now by the government's first anti-fraud champion, Conservative MP Anthony Brown, plus online scams expert Jack Whittaker. But first, we hear from a regular on this show who fell victim to a scam. Restaurateur and consumer expert, my mate Adrian Mills. You're supposed to be an expert, man. What happened? Tell me.
Jeremy, it's the usual. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And if I can be calmed, I swear to God, anybody can. Very simple. We have a restaurant in Soho. We had a demand for the rent plus service charge. We basically set it up, sent £11,000 rent, £3,000 service charge. The bank stopped the big payment going through, but they allowed the smaller one to go through. When I questioned it, they said, that's because it didn't seem unusual. Really? When we examined it, because nobody quite knows where the con came from, we say it was the managing agent, they say it was us. Somebody had got into the computer malware, and basically they had put, instead of .com, they had put .corn, C-O-R-N, because the R looks like an M. And that's when we suddenly realised somebody had hacked somebody's computer. Everything seemed legitimate. The names, the conversation, everything was perfect. Now, I'm not stupid. I immediately complained to Barclays, who they then wrote to me. Here's their letter. And basically, they're saying, we didn't think there was anything unusual with this payment, so we let the £3,000 go through. However, I then went to Monzo Bank, and they said, we can't deal with this because that's where the money went until Barclays contacted us. They took forever and a day to contact, and then they had the cheek to write to me and say, congratulations, we've got your money back. £19.27, because that's all that was in the account. And actually, I did a bit more research. I discovered where this company was operating from. It was from an industrial estate in the East End of London, and nobody, the police, the banks, nobody wanted to take it further. So we lost £3,100.
You lost 3,100 quid, so you never got the money back.
Not at all. And the girl that made the payment in our office is so meticulous. She's worked with us for years. She was distraught. She offered to resign. She was crying. And I said, no, seriously, it is not your fault because this is happening across the entire country. And you remember when I used to present That's Life, we used to deal with scams. Where are programmes dealing with this sort of thing nowadays? They're just not there.
There's an idea for a programme. Let's bring it back. On a serious note, what do the government need to do in layman's terms? Because it is happening, you're right, in so many different ways. You're pretty switched on. You lost 3,100 quid. Anybody can suffer. What does the government need to do, Aid?
Well, the government will always say we're going to set up a watchdog, which is, I believe, what you're about to talk about. But it's one thing being a talking shop. If you set up an organisation, they have to have teeth and they have to work in conjunction with the police, and it has to be taken seriously. £3,000 worth of business is a lot of money, but you hear about people losing hundreds of thousands of pounds and nobody seems to do anything about it. So stop talking about it and let's have some action.
Good man, stay there. Delighted to be joined now by Anthony Brown MP. Anthony, thank you for joining Jeremy Kyle Live. Rishi Sunak's first anti-fraud champion. Let's talk specifically about the claim you just heard from Adrian Mills. What is your government going to do specifically? Because scams are on, well, not just on the rise, they're everywhere, my friend.
They're the biggest form of crime in the UK, 41% of all crime, and about 80% of it's cyber-enabled, and it's completely unacceptable. And I've been appointed to get that down. I used to run the British Bankers Association. I oversaw some of the work the banks did to get crime down, and it's across all government departments. There's not one silver bullet here. We just published a fraud strategy. There's 50 different recommendations in there, and we're going to take all those forwards. And we definitely need to increase law enforcement. One of Adrian's frustrations, we're setting up a new national fraud squad, but one of the main focuses is actually stopping the scams happening in the first place. And this is getting the tech companies in particular, but also the mobile phone companies and the banks to use all their ingenious technologies to outwit the fraudsters and stop the fraudsters actually contacting the intended victims and actually put them out of business. And I've been here in the position for 2 weeks, but there's a lot of different ways that the tech companies and the mobile phone companies can do that. They started blocking scam texts, for example, about 600 million of them so far. A lot of them are still getting through, too many. We need to absolutely stop that. The scam that you just heard about from Adrian, that sounds, also, I don't know the full details. I just heard what he said there. It's absolutely terrible. He should. I don't know if he asked his bank for compensation, because it certainly sounds like it'd be due compensation. But actually, we are passing legislation which will make compensation mandatory from banks unless there's gross negligence. And it doesn't sound like he had gross negligence in this case, so he would get compensated. But ideally, you want to stop the fraud happening in the first place. It sounds like he had a spoof email there that actually triggered it. This is quite common. And indeed, I had discussions with the tech companies today about how they can stop spoof emails happening in future being used for scams.
I mean, the future's great. I guess it's the here and now. You talk about how even the big tech companies are being outwitted by individuals. What limits are there on sort of law enforcement about online scamming and crime? Should the government not be stronger with its punishment for these people?
Well, the government has brought in stronger punishments, actually, and it is in the process of strengthening law enforcement. But we're never going to arrest our way out of scams, not least because actually about 70% of them originate overseas, which makes it really difficult to get hold of people, and they're very good at covering their tracks. Where I think the real gains are is using the thing that's made scams grow so fast in the first place is the use of technologies. And the fraudsters are very ingenious. They're well funded. They're well organized. This is very rarely just some sort of cheeky chappy down the road trying his luck. This is well organized, well funded, organized gangs that are using technologies, and we need to use those technologies against them. But that means, and the tech firms, they are doing quite a bit, but they're clearly not doing nearly enough. They need to do far, far more to stop the scams happening. And they know what they need to do, and my job is actually getting them to do it.
All right, listen, Anthony, I know you have to go. Thank you very much indeed, Anthony Brown MP, government's anti-fraud champion. Let's move to Jack Whittaker. Jack, thank you for joining Jeremy Carr Live, an online scams expert. Why are we seeing so many more scams? You heard Adrian Mills' story. You heard how a man who did a programme years ago that was all about this, he lost 3,100 quid. The government talk about we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Adrian's frustration is that's hot air. What do we need to happen? Why is it blown out of proportion, this?
Yeah, I think in the past few years now, what we actually do as citizens has changed quite rapidly, especially since COVID. You have the elderly, more vulnerable people who are having to go and shop online, for instance. You have the changes in our routine behaviors, so we now date online more than ever. As a result of that, it's created the industrialization of fraud. There are, frankly, so many more opportunities now for fraudsters. And actually what we need to do is we need to start taking victims of fraud more seriously. We cannot be saying, oh, it's just a simple Nigerian email scam, it's a Nigerian print scam. Actually, what you have, as the government minister rightly said, are sophisticated fraudsters who are organized. And as such, we are in an arms race, and we need to try and keep a handle on this arms race now.
How? Specifically how? Not much time. What do you suggest the government should do?
Restore faith in people actually wanting to report fraud. Only 5% of fraud victims actually report fraud. So until we actually learn about how big the problem is, we don't actually know the scope of it yet. And the problem is action fraud was a complete disaster when it happened. I'm now looking to see whether the government can respond and do a proper job at this now.
Jack, thank you very much indeed. Back to Adrian. Fraud accounts for 41% of all crime across England and Wales. 3.7 million offences. You were one of them in the last year. 43 million adults have been affected. Very briefly, my friends, to stop this skyrocketing of scams, the government minister's words were great, but we need action now, don't we, pal?
Yes, we do, because they were words. And as I always say, in this day and age with everything online, trust no one. And remember that phrase that I've said a million times over many years, buyer beware.
I love you, Aid. Great to have you on. Sorry about your 3 million quid or 3,000. 3 million quid, good Lord, man. 3,000. Yeah, you wouldn't be sitting there if it was that, but thank you for highlighting your story. And